the name of the Creator, Redeemer, and Sanctifier. Please be seated. So today we heard a reading from Proverbs. You know some Proverbs? Who knows some Proverbs that you have learned throughout your lives? A watch pot never boils, right? Good things come to an end. Beggars can't be choosers. And of course, from the Bible, the blind leading the blind. The love of money is the root of all evil. Pride becomes before fall. And there's nothing new under the sun. So what are Proverbs? What exactly does the book of Proverbs mean? What is that all about? Earl Russell, a prime minister from 1861, said, "Proverbs are wit of one, the wisdom of many." Well, I actually never really had thought much about the book of Proverbs since seminary until I was struck by this reading this week. It talks about Lady Wisdom, and I was like, I don't remember Lady Wisdom from seminary. I'm sure I was taught that, but I just don't remember. It's been a few years. And I thought, what is this all about? And I rediscover that the book of Proverbs has the first 9 chapters is this beautiful poem setting up the sayings. It's a beautiful poem of how we need to live our lives in the ways of wisdom. And wisdom was created at the beginning of creation. And it's personified as a woman. One translation calls it Madam Insight. I love that. And that the creation was created with Madam Insight, and Madam Insight helped God create. And of course, in the Christian tradition, we have moved this understanding, this Madam Insight, this Lady Wisdom, to become the Holy Spirit. That's why, if you ever sit next to a rebel in church during the Nicene Creed, a she is snuck in right when they start talking about the Holy Spirit. Have you ever sat next to such a rebel? I invite you to sit next to me occasionally. Because in tradition, grammatically speaking, in Hebrew and Greek, wisdom is feminine. And in this poem, it's Lady Wisdom. The ancient Israelites, so what about this wisdom? The ancient Israelites believed the intellect didn't come from the head. They believed it came from the heart. So the organ they believed, which is where we stored all our intellect, is in the heart. I really was struck by that because we live in this age where knowledge is king. Knowledge is everything. And knowledge certainly stemming from the head. And so, I don't know how many times you've been at dinner with someone maybe of my generation or younger, and a question comes up, and the first thing you see pop out is what? The cell phones. We're going to Google it, right? Because all this information is at the tip of our fingers. And I'm beginning to wonder, especially after today's reading, if we've been leaning a little too hard into intellect and need to start paying attention to wisdom. So what's the difference between intellect and wisdom? I actually believe that the ancient Israelites and Egyptians who believed that source comes from the heart. I would actually even add the gut. And so what if we lived in a world where we all followed our heart and our gut and our mind? Now, the 7:30 service was like, that would be totally confusing. Could you imagine trying to live your life with all of those 3 things in concert? Well, they're exactly right. It's really hard because one time, society and our intellect tells us this is the practical way, but wisdom says this is the important thing. And our gut may say something completely different, right? Jesus talked about this meal And Lady Wisdom talked about this meal, this bread of life, and I think they're really the same thing. It's Lady Wisdom didn't even talk about just a meal. She talked about a feast. As a matter of fact, it's a feast so important, she sent all of her servants to work on it for days, and she slaughtered the best of her animals. And she was like, you know what? My house is not good enough. I need to build a huge welcoming hall for this feast. That's how incredible this feast is. And Jesus talks about this feast isn't something that happened in the past with the Israelites, and it's not something that just happens in the future. It's something that's happening with us right now, every day. That really gave me pause. There's a feast in our lives every single day. We just may not notice it. I get too busy with my lists, my things to do, my errands to run. Some of you may know that I've been taking this storytelling class. And basically, it's a storytelling class. We sit in a circle and we tell stories, and they're all supposed to be first-person stories. They're all supposed to be true stories, and they're all supposed to be 5 minutes with a beginning, middle, and end. Those are the rules of the class. And so the very first day I went into this class, I was truly terrified, because even though I get up here and do public speaking and I pretty much storytell every single week, it's quite a different thing to sit in a room with storytellers and have them tell stories too. So I was really quite intimidated. In my very first class, he says, okay, this is the basics of storytelling. Now we're going to spend the rest of the class, which was another hour and a half, mind you, telling stories. So all of you, I hope, are okay telling a story. What would you do in that situation? I don't know what you would do, but I panicked a little bit. I don't have a story to tell. What could I possibly tell about? And I started thinking about my life, about those grand moments in my life, right? Peace Corps. I could tell a story about Peace Corps. I don't even know what it'd say. It'd just be on and on and on. And I keep going like that. And I suddenly realized by the end of the class, what this class has really taught me is that my life is completely full of stories every single day. I just need to stop and notice them. I need to stop and notice them. So at the end of the day, one of the prayers I ask myself is, what story did I live today? I think that's how God is calling us to be, to look at life looking for the feasts, to take the moment and to enjoy the feast that is in front of us. It may not be a meal, but it might be a flower. It might not be the list of things you have to do, but it might be the person you're sitting right next to right now. It's just so hard in this world of knowledge where we're out to learn more, to do more, to take a moment to remember that wisdom is supposed to be a part of it, that our intellect is supposed to come from our heart and our gut. And so as we begin the season of starting everything new, school, jobs, the schedules start to get busier and busier, I'm encouraging us to take a moment every day to recognize the feast around us. I read Barbara Brown Taylor's book, Altar in the Sky, and she presents these different practices, and she says that wisdom is like a muscle. You have to practice it. You have to practice it every day, otherwise it'll atrophy, and you won't notice it. I have to look for stories in my life every day, otherwise I'll forget that they're there. Wisdom is something we must walk. It's something we must practice. Looking for those feasts in our life is something we must do every single day. Take a moment right now. What feast is before you today? Share it, glorify in it, and live in it. Amen.